this all scheduled work, as I said, for some of the improvements that they've been trying to do on the line and some of the maintenance work as well. If you'd like to let me know what you are seeing out there as you make your way around this morning, call me on the traffic line and tell me about it. 613-288-6900, and I'm back around 8 o'clock.
Okay, see you then. Thanks very much. Clear zero right now. Winds are pretty calm, so not much of a wind chill to speak of, but at times this morning it may feel something more like -5 with wind chill. High gets to 16 today. Clear tonight down to +4. Saturday and Sunday look like winning day is 18 for Saturday, and Sunday too. Sunshine, 19 degrees. Great weather for fall football, if that's in the cards for you. It's 7:38. This is Ottawa Morning. Transportation Safety Board is calling on the government to require physical fail-safe defenses in passenger trains and freight trains right across the country. It comes after an investigation published this week that found a CN train came within 335 meters of colliding head-on with a Via Rail train carrying 167 passengers. It happened outside of Cornwall in the spring of 2023. And for more on the incident and the call for fail-safe defenses in trains, I'm joined by Johan Martier. He's the chair of the Transportation Safety Board and in studio this morning. Nice to have him here. Thank you for having me. Walk me through the findings of the report. What is known about what happened on that date, April 2023?
So in this occurrence, you have two trains. You have one CN train traveling from Belleville to Montreal, and one Via train traveling from Montreal to Toronto.
Good morning. I'm just here driving through Ottawa. I have an appointment at 9:30. I want to make sure I get there through the traffic.
And so the idea is to have the CN train stop on the track to let the Via train cross over on the north track. And to do that, the CN train has to stop. So the CN train gets sent what we call a clear to stop signal. So it's that's the that they need to expect to stop. So to do that, have to slow down because they have to expect that the next signal will be a stop signal. So it's a bit like the signals we have on the road. It lets the crew know what to expect.
When you say a signal, I'm thinking it could be a text message from the boss, or is it a sign that flashes up?
It is a sign besides the track that they see, and there are various color codes that tell them what to do and what to expect for the next signal. So what they got was an advance clear to stop, meaning you can continue but expect to stop at the next one. So, but they missed the signal. They were focused on other tasks inside the cab, and they continued going at normal speed past the clear to stop signal. So a few moments later, when they arrived at the actual stop signal, it was too late for them to stop. They realized that the stop signal was coming in, so they put the train in emergency braking, but they went past the stop signal at 443 miles per hour. They made an emergency broadcast on the radio to tell everyone listening that they had passed their stop signal, and the Via train that was coming towards them heard the emergency broadcast and stopped their own train. So when everything was done, there was 1,100 feet, 330 meters between the two trains.
Okay. How hard is it for the Via train is probably going like 100 or something, and the freight train is going 40 or 50 kilometers per second? I don't need the precise numbers there, but just how hard is it for those two trains to stop in that distance?
Well, the CN train was a very heavy train, so it takes a very large distance for it to stop. The Via train it's a little easier for them to stop, and luckily they were going a bit slower than usual because they were expecting again to cross on the north track. So in this case, we were lucky that the Via crew reacted as fast as they did to stop their own train, and that the CN train broadcasted the emergency situation right away on the radio, so that way collision could be avoided.
The past chair of the Transportation Safety Board wrote a letter to the Minister of Transportation asking for physical fail-safe defense systems to be added to trains in Canada. How would a system like that work?
So, well, you have to understand that the current system for crews to follow signal indication relies on what we call administrative defenses. So administrative defenses are rules, procedures, guidelines that crews have to follow. The issue with administrative defenses is that if, for one reason or another, a crew does not follow the procedure or the guideline or the rule, well, there's nothing left to prevent a collision. So a physical fail-safe defense is another layer of defense that can intervene in cases where the administrative defenses don't work out. So in this specific case, what we're calling for is the system that we call ETC, Enhanced Train Control. In the US, it's called PTC, Positive Train Control. The idea is the same. It's a system that can intervene in cases where a crew does not follow a signal. So it will let the crew know that they missed the signal, and if necessary, the system can actually intervene and stop the train.
Does it work a bit like the system that's working in the cars of many of the people listening to us? I mean, modern cars now, if I following someone too closely and that person taps their brakes, my car will flash up a warning saying brake or brake alert, or may even start to slow down automatically. Is that something that's in the cards for trains?
The idea is the same, right? It is to intervene in cases where a crew member will not follow a rule or not see a signal.
Okay. How has the government responded to your calls for this fail-safe system?
So we have been calling for this in one form or another for 25 years. Our first recommendation on the subject dates back to 2000. We issued another one in 2013 and another one in 2022. The reason why my predecessor sent a letter to the minister is because we are currently investigating a series of these events. It's just not just this one. There are two others as well that are concerning that resulted in collisions between freight trains, one in Delta, BC, and one in Wainwright, Alberta. So it's a series of very concerning events that happened recently, which is why we're speaking out today to say, well, this needs to be done, and it needs to be done before the current timeline, which says 2030. And in our minds, it's too far down the road. There needs to be something that is done before that, which is why my predecessor wrote to the minister, and we haven't gotten a response from the minister as of today.
But you're saying your body has been calling for this for a quarter of a century. Why is it taking so long?
There are some challenges to implementing this in a territory as big as Canada. The territory is huge, and technologically it's hard to implement. It's also very costly. As a result of our multiple calls in 2022, Transport Canada issued what we call a notice of intent. Basically, it's a document advising the railway operators that a system like this would be implemented in the future. But the current timeline is 2030 for implementation, and my personal opinion, I don't have any insider information on this, but my personal opinion is that this timeline 2030 is a little optimistic, judging from what we've seen in the past, and it will probably be further down the road than 2030. So, and until then, there's nothing to prevent a collision aside from administrative defenses.
Is the idea that such a system would be added to both passenger trains and freight trains, or is there more needed on one route than on others?
So what we're calling for, the most recent recommendation is for high-risk corridors. So key routes are routes that transport dangerous goods, and high-speed rail corridors, so corridors that will transport passengers at higher speeds. So this is what we're calling for. So not 100%
I'm just driving in Ottawa.
It's not really realistic in a
Listening
territory of
to
Canada,
CBC
but we're calling
radio.
for, the high-risk part of the network.
Does it surprise you
7:45 a.m.
after Lac Megantic and all the awful hand-wringing, around the oversight of train safety, that something called for by the country's top authority can't get results more quickly?
Well, we certainly would like to get things moving, but at the TSB, we can investigate, we can identify safety deficiencies and make recommendations, but once we have done that, it's up to the regulator, to Transport Canada, to take action on this, and from our point of view, things are moving, but they're not moving fast enough.
Appreciate you coming in this morning. Thank you for
Thank you very much.
Yohan Maria. He's the chair of the Transportation Safety Board. CBC News has asked Transport Canada for comment on the story, and we did not hear back in time for our deadline. It's 7:47. This is Ottawa Morning. Good news, bad news situation with the weather, and the only bad news an hour ago was it was a little blustery, and so there was a wind chill of around -5, and I just don't think there's any wind chill at all right now, because the temperature's at 0, and the winds have really calmed down, so it's really just a whole good news picture on the weather front. High of 16 today, Tomorrow, sunny and 18 degrees. Sunday, sunny and 19. And Monday, get this, 23 degrees potentially and lots of sunshine. It is 7:48 and you're listening to Ottawa Morning. Now, almost 40,000 people in Canada speak Inuktitut in its various dialects. Now, those hoping to learn the language or communicate with Inuktitut speakers are getting a new tool to help them do that. Google is adding Inuktitut to its Translate app. The tech giant sought out the help of the Inuit Tapiri Kanatami, an organization that advocates for Inuit in Canada. Natan Obed is president of the organization. I spoke with him earlier and asked how this project came about.
Actually, Google reached out to us. We at Inuit Tapiri Kanatami have been producing tools that are available on our website. We also have co-developed the National Indigenous Languages legislation. And Inuktitut is the second most spoken Indigenous language in the country, and it is an official language within the Northwest Territories, Nunavut, and the Nunatsiba government. So there's a lot of online availability of Inuktitut documents. So Google Translate was looking to use an Indigenous language and saw the bones of being able to do something with Inuktitut quite readily, and so reached out to us, and we worked with them to finalize the project that they were working on.
Tell me more about that, what ITK's role in the project ended up being.
Well, Inuktitut is the term that we use to describe all of our dialects in the Inuit language. There are approximately 13 or 14 of them. But at the national level, ITK, as the national representative of Inuit in Canada, has been working to ensure that our language stays strong. And part of that is creating a unified writing system. So we created a unified writing system in 2019. We also created online tools like Inuktitut Kamiyakbite Converter, which is basically any of our dialects. You can plug it into the converter and it produces our unified writing system. Google employees were really interested in that particular converter tool and used some of the methodology from our tools to input into the Google Translate for Inuktitut. We also know that they used, say, the entire Hansard for the government of Nunavut in Inuktitut. So they have, going back to 1999, a massive amount of metadata that could go into making the AI function well for the translate function for Inuktitut to English.
Google wrote this blog post in which they say Inuktitut is an exceedingly complex language to translate well. Why do you think that is?
There's a few different points. First, there aren't as many language speakers. So in Canada, there are 39,000 Inuktitut language speakers. And so we then don't have the millions and millions of data points that perhaps other languages do to be able to create AI technology that can reliably spit out comprehensible translation. Also, in the grammar, it's backwards, so that you start with the subject of the sentence and you move backwards towards, like, whether it's in the future or in the past, or who's speaking, or how many people are in the room. Everything in our language is so complex when it comes to the composition of the sentence that translating it becomes exceedingly difficult as well. We haven't had to come up with terminology for a host of different things in the world. So if you're trying to translate something that is related to the Pacific or to deserts or there's not a lot of terminology that can support translation into terms that are just foreign to to our homeland.
Can you give me an example of the construction of Inuktitut? If I wanted to say, I ate breakfast this morning, how would I say that? I mean, what would the construction be in Inuktitut?
So you'd start with, I'm eating. Nearly you want to say, nearly is eat. So I'm eating. So you put the eat I. And if I say, I ate breakfast yesterday, or I ate yesterday, nearly la duma. So ate yesterday I. And if then we ate yesterday, it would then be ate yesterday, us. And it's dependent upon whether it's one person or two people or three people or more than three people. It's dependent on whether it was just a few minutes ago or whether it was yesterday or it was last month. So each one of those tenses is not just simply yesterday or in the past. It is a whole host of different computations that then also interplays with whether it's singular or plural. And then it's, again, switched completely different. So you have the noun or you have the subject of the sentence usually appearing first, and then everything qualifying it afterwards.
You pointed this out, that there are nearly 40,000 speakers in Canada, and while that's not millions, there are certainly smaller language bases, and there are speakers of Inuktitut in Greenland and Alaska. Why do you think this is only happening now?
We don't have official language status in this country at the federal level. Inuktitut is an official language of the jurisdictions of the Northwest Territories, and Nunavut it also is an official language of the Inuktitut government. So we have subnational official language status, but we don't have the status at the federal level that often then kicks into action a whole host of supports for that language. So we say in Nunavut, the federal government has no obligation to provide any official services of the government of Canada to Inuit in Nunavut, even though Inuit are an 85% majority within that jurisdiction and also a linguistic majority as well. So we haven't had the language promotion and language supports that are afforded to English and French. We don't have the associated monies that flow to populations who have official language status in this country. So a lot of this work has been done either with Inuit-specific money or with the NGO or the philanthropic worlds, where we've had partnerships with private foundations or specific businesses who see this as a part of either their corporate social responsibility, or in the case of Google's decision, it just sees this as a way in which to provide more tools for more people to interact with different languages. So we were the logical starting point in this country based on our self-determination in using our language. And I would say we are still fighting for the official language status, which then hopefully create just systemic ways in which we can support our language and use our language across the country.
At the same time, is there any concern in communities where this language is spoken and where it's very close to people's hearts that now that Google has a piece of it, that it might be commodified, or that people might make use of it, the digitization of the language in ways that they can profit from something which is culturally yours?
Yeah, there are immediate flags, and I would start with just not taking the Google Translate word as being, an official way in which an Inuk would use Inuktitut. There's going to be a while before this particular tool will be reliable in just basic translation. So if, say, somebody is making a movie, they have an Inuk character and they want that character to say a few words, please don't use Google Translate to then have somebody who doesn't speak Inuktitut say an Inuktitut sentence. So let's not bypass our communities and the complexity of Inuktitut because there's a tool that could get you to an answer very simply. The points around, I guess, our culture and the challenges of our culture, they interplay with the ability for us to interact with other people in the world. And so if this tool allows for Inuktitut to have a wider base and for more people to be able to interact with Inuktitut content and to celebrate Inuit culture and understand it a bit better, that's in the forefront of our minds. We will continue to work with Google to ensure that that runs as best as it possibly can for Inuktitut, and we've been thankful for the partnership so far.
Part of my conversation with Natan Obed, president of the Inuit Tapiri Kanatami Now, Google says it's rolling out its Inuktitut translation capabilities gradually. Yesterday, before that conversation happened, I took a look and there was no Inuktitut in Google Translate's drop-down menu. And this morning, there it is. So, and apparently it's going to get better and better as people use it. So it's a work in progress. It's 7:58 and Andrew Foote is back with the latest on the roads. Andrew.
Yes, you checked out of curiosity, and it is in the Google Translate app as well on my phone. Congestion is taking away more of the eastbound 417, Bayshore to Parkdale. It's nothing to detour away from. Slow now, leaving Rockland before the Ottawa border, and another small delay that way, westbound 417 around Nicholas Street. Hunt Club eastbound getting busy at the major intersections between 416 and Maryville. Westbound Hunt Club at Riverside. And another OC Transpo note, I see 2 Route 12 Parliament buses canceled in a row, including the one scheduled to leave Blair about 5 minutes ago.
Okay, thanks very much. Sunshine today, a little fog through the morning. Winds supposedly reaching 15 or so kilometers per hour. It's been calm so far this morning. The high is 16, and tomorrow sunshine and 18. And David Giroux joins us with a look at some news headlines. David?
Stu, Ottawa's next generation 911 service is on track to be ready next March. It's a step toward allowing people to text in an emergency or send a video of a crash. The national transition will move cities from analog to internet-based service, and it should speed up response times. A new pilot project is hoping to reduce the amount of single-use plastic at some Ottawa grocery stores. Participating stores will have containers near their salad bars or deli sections, which will have QR codes that can be scanned to keep track of them. We'll have more details on that story for you in my full local newscast in half an hour. Stick around. World Report is next.
Today on Q with Tom Power. In the new film, Honora, Mikey Madison plays a young woman working as a sex worker who ends up married to the son of a Russian oligarch.
Good morning. I'm driving through Ottawa, trying to get to a doctor's appointment that I'm not sure I have at this place, but it's
That's coming up on
possible.
Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Echo.
If I don't show up, it's $150.
CBC Listen app and everywhere you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Rebecca Zandbergen. Up to a quarter of pregnancies in Canada end in a miscarriage, but experts say they're still poorly managed and the effects for patients are emotionally devastating. How to fix miscarriage care, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. We begin with a new proposal to settle a years-long lawsuit against Big Tobacco, one that could see them pay more than $32 billion to provinces and territories, as well as to smokers and their families. At the center of it all, three tobacco giants, JTI McDonald, Rothmans, Benson and Hedges, and Imperial Tobacco Canada. For more on this, business reporter Scott Peterson joins us in Toronto. Scott, what can you tell us?
Well, the lion's share is going to go to the provinces and the territories because they were the one that bore the cost of the healthcare system dealing with smoking-related illnesses. But a lot of it will go down to individual Canadians as well. For example, this is the breakdown. Provinces and territories get close to the, like I said, the lion's share, $25 billion. But Quebec smokers, families, descendants set to receive about $4.25 billion. $2.5 billion is proposed for smokers around the rest of the country, and also there's $1 billion earmarked for the foundations to fight tobacco-related diseases. Now, this is a long and costly case, and historical, you could say, in precedence. It dates back as early as 1998, and a lot of smokers have died since then. So this will also be awarded to the descendants and even the descendants of the families of those smokers involved here.
We saw deals like this in the United States decades ago. What took so long in Canada?
Yeah, part of the reason is there was two class action lawsuits in Quebec that were won and appealed back in 2015. And so this settlement now that's proposed by these companies sort of rolls that into it. But there's also the complex nature of this case. Really, and what's at the core here, like that U.S. settlement that we saw back in the 90s, is what kind of responsibility does a company have when they're selling a legal product to warn their customers? And so this is what played out as well. And it's a long, complicated case, but we're learning that the companies have quite a bit of responsibility.
Scott Peterson in Toronto. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, John.
The Assembly of First Nations has rejected a $47.8 billion deal to reform the child welfare system. The agreement was initially reached with the federal government back in July after a nearly two-decade legal battle over funding for on-reserve child welfare services. The CBC's Linda Ward is following this development. Linda, tell us more about what happened.
John, chiefs at the AFN-hosted meeting in Calgary heard 2 days of really emotional perspectives over this deal, which ended up being actually quite polarizing. The result, 267 votes against, 147 in favor, 1 abstention. This is the moment it was defeated.
Draft resolution number 1 does not carry, so is defeated.
You can hear the cheers in the room there. The $47.8 billion agreement was reached in July with the government to address the government's underfunding of on-reserve child welfare services. The Canadian Human Rights Tribunal found that was discriminatory. There was a class action lawsuit back in 2007. But this deal was ultimately rejected because some said there were just so many flaws, and it didn't go far enough to ensure the discrimination would stop. They also said that the government didn't consult properly with First Nations in the negotiations.
Linda, you mentioned the emotion at this meeting. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, some fought pretty hard to have this approved. We heard from Vanessa Adams, the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne, who said, "We can't leave this to the politicians in this political climate."
To delay the agreement when there is an upcoming election is detrimental. The status quo is not working anymore.
Others fought just as hard against it. Cindy Blackstock launched the human rights complaint in 2007 and said chiefs can do better than the deal that's been reached.
We've been at the human rights case for 18 years. Are we going to agree to a deal that's 9 years and keep your fingers crossed after that?
We also heard from the Anishinaabe
Look at the
Nation in
beautiful
a statement
trees.
late yesterday calling the way this defeat was celebrated, quote, shameful. They said they will now regroup and begin discussions with the government on a new path forward. This isn't over. The Assembly will continue to debate the remaining resolutions today. Those resolutions will then determine what happens next.
Linda Ward, thank you.
You're welcome.
With the U.S. election just 2 weeks away, both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are campaigning hard in Michigan. The critical swing state is home to one of the largest Muslim and Arab communities in the U.S. As Chris Reyes explains, the war in the Middle East has created a hurdle for Harris and the Democrats.
The Middle East is the main issue on my mind. Who's going to give me a ceasefire? Who's going to stop the bombing of my people?
Restaurant owner Sam Hammoud is like many voters in Dearborn, Michigan, the first Arab-American majority city in the U.S. Hammoud's father is in Beirut. He survived a recent Israeli strike, but his home was flattened.
My father had a condo on the 6th floor, which is now on the floor zero, as we call it.
The community's anger over the Biden administration's handling of the war could swing this critical state, and many are turning away from the reported in 2020, the Democrats. Samra Lukman, a local activist, understands the power of her vote.
I want the Democrats to lose by any means necessary, and that means voting for Trump.
When Joe Biden was still on the ticket, some 100,000 voted uncommitted against him in the Michigan primaries over his stance in the Middle East. That blame has now shifted to Kamala Harris.
I'm with Abandon Harris, and we endorse Joe Stein.
Local activist Farah Khan is part of a movement actively campaigning against her.
Holding these people accountable, Harris and Biden administration accountable, punishing these people. If that, the consequences is Trump presidency, so be it.
It's an anger that could shake this election, with Michigan a key state to winning the White House. Chris Reyes, CBC News, Dearborn, Michigan.
U.S. officials have charged a former Indian intelligence officer they allege Vikas Yadav was involved in a foiled plot to murder 6 separatists in New York City. The target was believed to be a dual U.S.-Canadian citizen. Indictment claims Yadav was with India's spy service and that he worked with others in India and abroad to plan the assassination. The U.S. is expected to seek Yadav's extradition from India. Residents in an Edmonton neighborhood are feeling unsettled. Some recently received extortion threats after an arsonist set fire to a house. Julia Wong has more.
Flames ripped through a central Edmonton house early Sunday morning as the family of 4 inside fled to safety. The fire was deliberately set, say police, and nerves continue to be on edge.